Okay, hello guys. Today we are going to have Jose talking about why Debian. So let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. For the starter, I want to thank you, my job, for sponsoring my trip to India, to be at this DebConf and meeting all of you. So why Debian? This is an introductory to my history of life from the first years of grown up and working with computers. So for a start, I'm going to introduce myself. Then I will talk about important events from the 90s. I will give my impression of first contact with Red Hat, and then my first contact with Debian. And the end, of course, and a conclusion. All of these have shaped myself into what I am in the present. Who I am. Since 2009, I'm a sysadmin of Unix and Linux. This means that at that time, I wanted to learn very much how to be a sysadmin of Unix machines. I'm a Debian contributor for a long time. On my free time, I'm an open source developer. This means these 3 programs I maintain myself on my spare time: SwitchConf, ATDaemon, and LogCheck. And since 2017, I became a Debian developer. Beginning of the 90s, there was a release of a GNU manifesto. This was an important. And there is the first release of Linux is from that time. And in Portugal, there was no easy access to the internet. So at that time, a research institute called INESC had access to the internet for all its computers and researchers. But at University Technic, where I study, only some computers had connection to the internet. There was no wide campus available, and even less TCP/IP, the protocol of the internet. And at the beginning of the 90s was the first web browser. Was at this time. First Mosaic, then Netscape was the first browser. And there was a Portuguese Unix user group, PUG, that they made a point of trying to reach that individual could be at the internet in Portugal. And, as a point, this is the Windows Forward Groups, the first Windows that could have TCP/IP. This means the first Windows that could talk to the internet, where you can run programs. A graphical operating system where you could run programs. The beginning of it. So what happened in my life from 1991? I started my degree at Técnico, 5 years degree, because at that time there was no standard on what was bachelor, doctorate, or just a post degree. There was workstations from digital running with RISC CPUs. This means that were CPUs that not Intel, that were available for us to study, to do our classes on Unix. And to connect to these digital workstations, you had many text terminals, the old ones, where you would just have characters on the screen. And there was later the first X11 terminals, black and white. Big screens, and by being really big screens, but just black and white, with the graphics. And it was my first time I read the GNU manifesto, and I was, wow. What an interesting ideas they have here. And I had my first access to GNU tools, Bash, EGC, GDB, Emacs, Guitar, And then was another, wow, someone is doing software for free for the benefit of everyone? Yes, there is. At INESC, where the research institute I was, to the group of investigation at INESC, I had access to silicon graphics. For those who don't know what is silicon graphics, was the first company very heavily on graphics at that time. This means that these workstations were the first to have advanced graphics with colors and that kind of things. So very advanced GUI was available at that workstations. What I had in my school, LTIs, where the labs where the IT classes were running, was an old computer 386, the first CPU that could run Linux, with just 5 megabytes of RAM, that were chosen to run SCO, one of the first Unix operating systems for a PC. But they were so useful that every student boot up with DOS floppies or Linux to do something useful from these computers. You didn't like SCO at that time. And the wow of that time was that these PCs were as fast as the digital Unix workstations. This means at that time the Unix PCs were really fast if you give them the right operating system. Another wow was that the Linux kernel that time, pre-1.0, was very stable, much less buggy than many of the common Unix availables for that time. Many people have switched to Linux from other Unix because it was stable. Not only because it's cool, not only because cooperation worked, it was really a better product. And I have access to several Unix workstations at INESC. So in 2009-3, I bought my first PC that could run Linux. What I've done it, I was a student, I want to play games, I want to use my DOS to play games, I want to learn how to use Windows, and I want to learn how to use Linux and OS2. That was an important thing at that time. So, triple boot, because double boot was not enough. And for Linux, I installed Slackware. Slackware was installed from floppies. I don't know if everyone knows what is a floppy. At that time, I don't remember because it was a long time ago, was Slackware 1.0 or 1.1. And I used as a tool to learning Unix in general, because one of my goals in life was to learning Unix. So I use it to learn sysadmin of Linux systems. And to get an idea how old this was, sources of a pre-kernel 1.0 could fit on one floppy. This means that was less than 44 megabytes. That was so small, the kernel at that time. So in 2094-95, I don't remember where, I've done my first upgrade of Slackware, my first upgrade of Linux. And I needed to do by reinstall. So in the end of 2094, I finished my degree. This means I was now engineer, computer engineer. And I needed to have access to internet at home because I was no longer at the university. This means that I had a small modem, a Zoom, a brand of that time, of one of most known brands of that time, at 2,800 baud or bits per second. Now we measure our internet on megabits, or even 1 gigabit per second. So I've done my second upgrade of Slackware. And I've done it again by reinstall. And this time, the upgrade didn't switch me because I was losing my setups, my settings, my personal files, just to upgrade the Linux. So it made a big impact on me. I was thinking to myself, I don't want to upgrade Linux by reinstallation. So after 96, I wanted to update my Slackware without reinstallation, was my goal. So I started to search for a new Linux distribution. At that time, there was bundles of CDs with a lot of internet from software, from mirrors, lots of Linux distributions. So that's what I started. I started to buy bundles of CDs with internet mirrors distributions because the internet was too slow at home to download everything from the internet. So I've done my first installation of Red Hat from CDs, and then my first installation of Debian. How was my first contact with Red Hat in the 90s? Or it was Red Hat in the 90s. Several GUI applications for sysadmin, that was a new thing. So we had several graphical applications to do administrative tasks, but they had a downback. The several configuration files, they had instructions to not edit them, to just use the GUI applications. At that time, I knew my first thing about system administration. I was doing by editing test files, and this was a shock. I could not edit my beloved files. And another thing that I didn't like is that there are two families of Unix, BSD and System 5, and even Linux now. Every distribution, more or less, follows one of these two families. But not Red Hat. Red Hat didn't follow this standard. These two families is something by itself. So in the end, I got the feeling that Red Hat was not a good place to learn Unix sysadmins of Unix machines. This means that if I keep up with the Red Hat, I was only learning how to be a good sysadmin of Red Hat. At that time, I want to be a good sysadmin of Unix, Linux in general. So I started to install my first Debian, 1.3. It was very in the beginnings of everything. I had some errors. So because 2.0 was available on the internet already, when I installed it from CDs, the first 1.3, and because I was very naive, very young, very ignorant, I didn't know how to solve my problems on Debian yet. So I bought another bundle of CDs and installed Debian 2.0, and everything was fine. No problems this time. The test configuration files there were to be edited by the sysadmin, by the person in front of the computer, and these changes were preserved across upgrades. This means that I could do upgrades in place that will not lose the settings that I have taken so many months exploring and learning and setting up the computer. And the placement of the files, the distribution of files by the system, was very much like System 5. And I like it. And I like it because it's similar to Solaris that I had at work. I was working, I have access to several Unix, but the most promise at that time, the one that people thinking the future of Unix is Solaris, was System 5. So I got the feeling that if I learn Debian, I'll be learning Solaris. And if I learned Solaris, I got the feeling I was learning Debian. And I find a good documentation on it. And I could do upgrades without losing my settings, without needing to reinstall. So that was good. So I found that was a good platform to learn to be a sysadmin, and something that was caught on the GNU manifest and GPL license, GNU tools. It was a work of volunteers. Everyone volunteered to do something better for everyone. So, in conclusion, what I have to tell you. I'm very influenced by the beginning of the 90s, what happened at that time. I've experienced the power of Unix versus DOS and Windows, and I prefer Unix. Unix at that time was much more powerful, much more, what many people was asking from Windows was granted from the beginning on Unix. Running many applications at the same time, the crash of one application didn't mean the crash of the operating system with all the apps going down with it. I learned to appreciate free software. This means that I learned how good it is to have a program and have access to the source, to the change, to look to the source as I seemed fit, ask for help if I had any problem. And I was among the first to use Linux and Debian about my group of people. So I don't feel I'm a pioneer, but I was among the first pioneers of computers at that time. Thank you. And you have some time for questions, if anyone have questions.
Yes, we have 20 minutes for questions, and I think we should have a lot of questions. If they don't, I do, so let's keep going. Please raise your hands, and I'll go to you for questions. Oh, we do have back there. Please state your name when you receive the microphone, and stand up if you're seated.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Andy. You've had a lot of experience. How has the journey shaped your viewpoint on where Linuxers are today? How the underlying systems have changed underneath you? How much has been carried forwards from the 90s? How much is new? How much are you continually having to learn and change?
Good question. I never think about that. Because the changes were coming very slow, but on a Debian system, the things, I got the feeling that didn't change radically for new things. So what I've learned in the 90s was good for 2000, is good for 2010s, and is good for now 2020s. I got that feeling. Knowledge is helpful. The books of Unix from that time for System 5 are still good for now. And what you have different now are things that was already different from that time on commercial Unix. For example, printing. Printing always been a problem with computers, whatever is the operating system. And Solaris had his own system for printing. That was different, that you need to learn how to do it. In Debian, at that time, you had the LPD system from Berkeley to use for printing, and you had one or two extras to improve your printing system. But in the end, the general idea is the same.
Oh, we do have one here.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Shyam. This was an interesting talk. Thank you. Have you ever tried or got interested in Debian BSD or any BSD flavors?
Yes. Some time ago, I've tried a variant of Debian on a BSD kernel. And what I explained, I got the feeling that I was using a kernel, by the look of sysadmin, by looking into the proc directory and sys directory that don't exist on a BSD, that it was a poor imitation of Linux. This is bad to say because BSD is older than Linux, is more stable, more robust, so it can do things that not can do things. For a long time, it can do loads, much heavier loads than a Linux can do for long years. And running Debian with the BSD kernel is running Debian. There is no particularly different for us to learn because everything is in the same places. The only thing different is the kernel. So it's interesting. I recommend if you need to use something different from Linux, if you can use Debian because your knowledge will be helpful. But in the end, it's just Debian.
My name is Prajwal, so I have a question about what is the change in philosophy of Debian now compared to the 90s? Like at that time there might not been a lot of operating systems, so Debian might just be trying to be an operating system, free operating system for the users. But now there are like a lot of free operating systems, so what is the goal now versus then?
I didn't study that aspect of the system. I just wanted to use Debian. But the feeling is, you may get the feeling that now there are more options, but in the end it's the opposite. Now Linux is dominating the Unix world. All the Unix are almost dead, if not all of them dead. At that time there was many Unix variants, many things that you could buy, many vendors of hardware that ship their hardware with their own Unix. And there was a second part of the question, sorry.
Yeah, like there were like multiple options now. There are multiple options now. Yeah, there are multiple options now, and back then like Debian was trying to be a stable operating system. Now it's already stable and already has a proper base. So where are we moving compared to that 90s time?
To be certain, I feel it's the same operating system, it's the same distribution. We just finally call ourselves universal. That was Debian was at that time. We tried to be something to everyone, but now we recognize ourselves as universal. And I like it very much because it was one of the first to have upgrades and was one of the first to have a way of installing software with dependencies and a well-managed system of dependencies that was not available on Slackware, for example. The procedure of installing Slackware was just something like you untar a lot of tar files and you hope that you have everything on place, that you have already pre-installed the dependencies for the system.
Hello, I'm Sriram. You said you used to triple boot on your system back then. So do you still use any other operating system beside Debian? And did you ever wanted to try Slackware again? Since it is still maintained today, did you ever want to try it along with Debian?
Okay. Yes, I'm still double boot because, or triple boot, depends on the hardware that I have with me. Because as I am a sysadmin at university, if they give me an Apple hardware, I'll do triple boot. I'll install it Windows, Mac OS, and Debian. Why? Because I need to support users that have the other operating system besides Debian. I need to learn the details, how to connect to the Wi-Fi of the university. That is peculiar. It's universal, it's edu-ROM, but have some peculiarities, some things that you need to do it on yourself so you can help other people. Why I have double boot on my computer? Because I like to play games. And I got the feeling I want two things. I don't want to fight my Linux to install games. And I want a clear separation of these things for fun and things for work. So this means it's important for me to boot on Windows, play my game, do whatever support I needed on Windows. For example, could be running a special site that only works on Windows. Hopefully, I don't have a none of them. And then switch to Linux to do my work, or to upgrade the system, to learn more about Linux, to do my open source development. That's what I like it. And if I feel the need to try other operating systems, other Linux distributions, no. I'm happy enough, and from what I see from my friends and co-workers, I have not yet found an appeal of a better distribution than Debian.
More questions? We do have one here, but you can raise your hand so I can keep track.
Yeah, hi, Sakib here. So I have a question regarding the security and hardening of the OS, basically. So if I have used multiple flavors, okay, so in Red Hat or CentOS rebuild and the upcomings like Rocky, Alma, Linux, so they have a security enhanced Linux, that is SE Linux. This was first introduced in the NASA systems, okay. So now even all the storage network devices, they are running on the free BSD, they customize free BSD and they boot up their particular OS and services. So what makes Debian more secure, because Debian and Ubuntu don't defaultly implement SE Linux. So even if your OS is becoming hardening more secure, so how it will be when you are not using by default SE Linux?
Why I think Debian is more secure? That's why you are asking me in the end.
Means Debian should also use SE Linux by default to secure and harden their systems?
Okay. I don't know if I understand well your question, sorry.
Okay.
My interpretation is why I think Debian is secure and why I think is more secure than other distributions.
That is one part. Other part is of SE Linux.
So let's first do the first part, then we'll talk later for the second part, if you don't mind. Why I think Debian is secure and more secure than most of distributions? Because some years ago, before security was a very big issue on the internet, when we installed that, we were installing everything on it. So this means that you are installing a lot of software that sometimes, not only a lot of software, it sometimes have two options. First, when you are using Red Hat, for example, that's my example, there are other distributions with some defaults. This means that you are installing all the software and you are installing all the software running, available on the internet. And sometimes it's software that you don't know, that you don't need. And this means that you have lots of software on your servers, on your computers, that's vulnerable, just because you don't know. That's one of the biggest problems with security, is the things you don't know. With Debian, you have a more focused installation. You only install what you need. And because of that, even now, when you install something new, you get something that is working. The other distribution that install bundles of software needed to switch the idea from installing everything working to install everything disabled, just for security reasons, making things a little more harder for them. So, from my point of view, I think Debian is more secure, even if it doesn't have SEO Linux or only now have AppArmor. Because AppArmor or SEO Linux is not bullet gun about security. It's just one tool. And my approach to security from what I learned from Debian is I set up a server. I only install the software that I know very well, the only software that I need on it, and I want to make it secure to be on the internet without the need of a firewall. Because a firewall is another tool, but it's not a bullet, silver bullet to make it secure. It will only help you. If you need to give service to the internet and if they are not secure, you'll not be the firewall that will help you protecting your machine. Okay?
So other part we can discuss offline if you don't mind.
So what?
It is basically SE Linux, security enhanced Linux. So Debian, Ubuntu, even SUSE, they are not implementing SE Linux by default. Now this comes when you have the Red Hat distribution basically. So SE Linux secures. It even doesn't allows you to launch a service, doesn't allows you to launch a process unless it has the security label. And this was introduced based upon the NASA request when Red Hat Linux migrated to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or HEL, basically. So my point is, like Debian has AppArmor, you can secure the app inside AppArmor and restrict it over running. So we should also have security enhanced Linux to have more security.
Okay. My point of view of using SEL Linux and AppArmor is that is a tool, it's just another tool, but it will make harder to set up the machine as you like it. Because if you deviate from what is expected on SEL Linux on AppArmor, it will break. It will break the software. It will break your application. This means that if you are a little more creativity with where you put your files, where you are finding your settings, where you put your data to be searched by the internet, maybe AppArmor will not allow you to do it. So you need to learn how to create exceptions. But exceptions is something that you need to learn very well how to do them. If not, you are open so many exceptions that the system is not secure, besides having AppArmor or SEL Linux. So it's just a tool. It will help you. But until now, from me, many of the people that I know that are using Red Hat users of SEL Linux, most of the time they dissolve SEL Linux because they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge to use that tool.
While nobody raises their hands, I will do one question. Okay, I'll just pass to you. Right. How did you find the GNU Manifesto, and how did you came to this word? Like, it's not a thing that you, everybody's talking about the GNU Manifesto and all that. So how did it go?
Because I was in the labs of the university. I have access to the digital workstations. Let me go back. So I had access to the second point. I had access to digital workstations, and they come with very little software, because at that time, everything you need to buy it an extra. So the sysadmins of that machine start installing new tools, and with that, I was trying to learn most I could. I was looking up inside the root file system, and I found the GNU Manifesto, I found the GPL, and I was surprised in a good way.
Please hold like this, stand up.
My name is Ravish. So I have just one simple question. So what is Debian? Is it the people? Is it the OS? Or is it the both?
Sorry? I don't understand your question. Can you repeat?
So what is Debian, right? So I know like it's a OS or something, but it's more than an OS, right? So is it people or is it the OS? So what is it to you?
To me, what makes Debian great?
Yeah,
Everything.
thank you.
Is the operating system, it have get right many things from the beginning. It's the people, because I'm a long timer coming to DebConf. It's good to every year to meet old friends. And another thing that is make it great is because people feel free on Debian, feel free to participate, feel free to contribute. This means that you have a wider, different kind of people working on Debian, using Debian, than you have in the other commercial distributions. And that makes it great, too.
So we have just one more question after this one because of time, okay? So if you want to do, raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm Akash. So it was very interesting to learn about your experiences about Microsoft software and Linux. So I'd like to know if you have any experience with Apple system softwares from the 90s.
Sorry, can you repeat in...
Yeah, I just wanted to know about your experiences about Apple software from the 90s.
If you have experience with old Apple software? No. I have colleagues that work with Apple software and Apple hardware from the 80s and 90s. I just had experience with the OS 10 of Apple. This means that I was working on a Unix system, very what is in the end a BSD, and it was great. And my feeling about Mac OS is that it does 90% what you need and does it well. If 90% fits you good, you have a good system. If not, you have to search elsewhere.
We have time for one more question. Does anyone want to take it?
Hi, I'm Abraham. Do you have any experiences with Debian-derived operating systems? I mean, Ubuntu.
No.
Thank you.
What I do from time to time, I recommend people to try Ubuntu when Debian doesn't work out of the box on new laptops. I don't mind to recommend people to try Ubuntu. But in the end, I'm a Debian user. I'm happy with it. And I got the feeling that you learn much more if you use Debian to the end, if it is not working 100%, than doing jumping from distro to distro. I'm feeling you don't learn so much.
So we have a time restriction. I will ask to directly ask your question to Jose later. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So guys, let's do some things. At 12:30, 10 minutes from now, lunch will start, okay? And then we have a job fair at 1:30, 13:30. And then we get to the presentations at 15:30 or 3:30 p.m., okay? So let's now thank Jose for his talk.
It's me, I thank you all.